In business today, three things to know. First, talk of a thaw in Washington. Both sides appear willing to pass a short-term deal, and the markets take off on the news. Then, it's day 10 in the budget standoff. If there is a debt ceiling deal, could a new budget be far behind? And more, the occupant of the corner office has a new look. Has the glass ceiling for women finally been broken? Arise XChange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. It's a ray of sunshine from Washington as there may be progress in ending the political stalemate over the budget and debt ceiling. House Speaker John Boehner said today that Republicans might be willing to temporarily increase the debt ceiling if President Obama is willing to discuss other budget and deficit issues. The U.S. is scheduled to hit the debt ceiling on October 17th, which could set the stage for the country being unable to pay some of its obligations. That small piece of good news was enough to propel the markets today, and they certainly took off. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbing 323 points to 15,126. It's the best one-day performance in months. Markets up better than 2%. All 30 Dow component stocks going up. The S&P 500 up also 2%, 3616 to 1692.56. All S&P sectors finished higher, and the Nasdaq up 82.97 to 37.60.75. Secretary of Treasury Jack Lew told Congress today that the political theater over the budget and the debt ceiling is seriously harming U.S. credibility. He testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee.
This brinksmanship threatens the holders of government bonds and those who rely on Social Security and veterans benefits. Interest rates would skyrocket, instability would occur in financial markets, and the federal deficit would soar. The United States has a special responsibility to itself and the world to meet its obligations.
Today on Capitol Hill, House Republican leaders offered President Obama what they named a good faith proposal to temporarily increase the country's debt ceiling. Kevin Cirilli, financial reporter at Politico, joins us now from Washington, D.C., to give us a better sense of exactly what is going on inside the Beltway. Kevin, we began the show by saying there's talk of a thaw. Would you say that's accurate?
You know, I think it is, and I think that everyone that I'm speaking with on Wall Street, Main Street, international community, and lawmakers as well, I think that there is sort of this consensus and expectation that there would be a short-term deal, a deal that lasts about 6 weeks to 2 months, at least on the debt ceiling. Now, as well as for the partial government shutdown that we're seeing, it seems that each day the government is shut down, the less severe it gets. But you know, I would expect a short-term deal to be reached sometime within the next week. Perhaps probably not this week, though.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, we've heard some kernels of words coming out, and it does appear that at least the rhetoric is being ratcheted down. And is that where a lot of this hope is coming from?
Yeah, because I think the answer to that, the reason why is twofold. The first is that this October 17th deadline. Now, some Republicans, some debt ceiling deniers would argue that we've got a little bit more time after the 17th, but it really is as if the nation's economy, to use a metaphor, it's as if we're in a car and the gas light has gone on and we might run out of gas. So I think that as we continue to inch closer to that deadline, we could have seen negative market reactions. Today we saw a positive market reaction, and there's a lot of apprehension and uncertainty on Capitol Hill.
Tell me what's going on with the House Republicans then. Why a little bit of the change? Is Speaker Boehner starting to win over more of his caucus?
Well, you know, I think that if you look at the recent polls, nobody's happy with the House Republicans, except
they have like a 5% approval
yeah,
rating.
Some of the more conservative parts of the party, the Tea Party movement. But you know, I think that again, it comes down to the debt ceiling and the negative repercussions that would have on the economy and the uncertainty that creates for the credit rating as well as internationally. But I will say that as far as the partial government shutdown goes, that's a completely separate debate. And you know, just today we heard the ranking member of the Banking Committee, Senator Mike Crapo, a Republican, urging folks to rein in some of the entitlement spending, and that there will be some sort of negotiation with the shutdown, if it's a smaller deal, all they're doing is kicking the can into January for another debate. And so if it's a smaller deal, not much has accomplished from either side.
Kevin, where is the negotiation taking place right now? Is it within the Republican Party, or is it with the Republicans and the president?
I think it's twofold. I think that really it's between Speaker Boehner as well as some of the Democratic leadership. I think you're seeing a little bit of negotiations between Speaker Boehner and Obama, but it really is Boehner and the leadership of the Democrats. And then as for the negotiations going on between the Tea Party and Boehner, that's the second drama in all of this, is it's really this political drama of a personal relationship between the Speaker and the Tea Party that is fascinating to watch as it emerges, because I think that, Speaker Boehner is in a really tough spot having to negotiate with Democrats and his own party. And
is there a sense, though, that this is a reduction in tensions, but if anything, it's really just a Band-Aid because we're going to kick it down to 6 weeks?
I don't think it's in no way do I think this is a reduction in tension at all. I think that it's essentially they're running up against the clock and everyone realizes they can't get to the 17th unless there would be a technical default, but that's where it gets a little bit more in the weeds. I think this is really kicking the can down the road a couple of weeks into January.
And Congress is really good at that. That's what we've been doing now for a couple of years with the debt ceiling. So what are the next procedural steps here for Congress?
So two things, right? If they temporarily raise the debt ceiling, that would expire in 6 weeks to 2 months, and then they would have to deal with the partial government shutdown. I will say that this issue of Obamacare, when you look at Obamacare, it is largely a politically polarized debate within the American constituency, and I think that as we inch closer to 2014, you're going to be seeing some more centrist Republicans and Democrats who are up for re-election in these 2014 districts have to stake out a position on Obamacare because of a lot of how it has controlled the debate these past couple of weeks.
Okay, Kevin, thank you so much for your insight today.
Thanks for having me.
Kevin Cirilli, financial reporter at Politico. And if you wonder who we have to make debt payments to, this chart is a good illustration. As of July, we own foreign holders of U.S. Treasuries $5.6 trillion. Our biggest debt is held by China, with nearly $1.3 trillion. Japan is second at $1.2 trillion. The Caribbean banking system, which includes the United Kingdom, is $288 billion. And oil exporters, the Middle East countries, $258 billion. That is where our debt is going. A jump in weekly jobless numbers. Despite the partial government shutdown, the Labor Department releasing the weekly totals. First-time claims rose 66,000 to 374,000. That's the largest one-week increase since November of 2012. However, the numbers may be skewed by a computer glitch in California. State labor officials only now got up to speed on claims. Today's report does not include federal workers laid off due to the shutdown. The government's new health insurance marketplaces getting panned in a new poll. 3/4 of those who have signed up for the new exchanges report problems. According to an AP poll, just 7% say things have gone honky-dory. President Obama says if people experience problems online, they should keep trying. In a major step to set itself apart from mobile services, other operators, T-Mobile is eliminating roaming fees and providing unlimited data at no extra charge for travelers to more than 100 countries. The industry has been charging huge fees for international texting and data downloads, often shocking consumers with extraordinarily expensive mobile phone bills when they get home. T-Mobile's new offer will be available starting October 31st. The new iPhone 5S and 5C haven't helped Apple's stock. Apple shares are still down, actually down 4% since the phone's debut. Analysts say that actually follows a typical pattern when Apple unveils new products. Apple will report fiscal fourth quarter earnings on October 28th. And in other technology news, Twitter may have accidentally let the cat out of the bag as to the date the company goes public. Companies doing an IPO usually try to keep the date secret as long as they can. But Twitter accidentally filled in a line on its S-1 registration statement about when companies, or employees rather, could begin selling their shares. That allowed financial reporters to count 90 days backwards and come up with November 15th as the day that the IPO could hit the street. Get this story. Imposter service animals are a surprising new problem. You know who you are out there. It's an easy law to break because no papers are legally required for real service dogs. Individuals are going online to obtain those vests or backpacks that say service animal, then strapping them to their poor household pets in order to get them into stores and restaurants where they would otherwise be banned. You're making your animals criminals, folks. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's a federal crime to use a fake dog. It's a real dog, but a fake service dog. And about a fourth of all states have laws against service animal misrepresentation. And one of the world's most expensive bottles of wine goes on sale today in Dubai. Only 6 of the 2009 Chateau Margaux bottles were ever produced. It's estimated each 12-liter bottle will fetch just around $200,000. That would come to a pricey $2,500 a glass, even expensive by New York City standards. Next, we'll have more on the economy and how it's impacting the markets. You are watching Arise Exchange. Welcome back to Arise Exchange. So it's been a busy day on top of a busy week for anyone watching both Washington and the markets. Peter Cadillo, chief market economist at Rockwell Global Capital, is here to talk about the markets and the economy. Peter, welcome back to Exchange.
Good to be back.
You know, I want to start with today's rally, more than 300 points on the Dow. A little bit of an overreaction to just a few encouraging words out of Washington, or appropriate?
No, I don't think so. I think it was very appropriate. You know, this market was down, 4.5%, 5%. And, of course, you know, it's been basically in a nervous state ever since the government shutdown took place. And, of course, as we approach the deadline for the debt ceiling. So the market, you know, is really looking forward right now. And I think certainly, we're probably going to get some sort of short-term deal here. And, of course, we'll be back to the table. And,
in a few weeks.
Yeah, in a few weeks. But
market has a very short attention span.
Right, exactly. But you have to realize, why is the market really rallying the way it did today? And that is simply due to the fact that, you know, Yellen was officially nominated the new Fed chief, and So the market really didn't have a chance to applaud that in a big way. So
Right, yesterday was a little bit of a moderate up, and I want to talk about Yellen in a moment, but a little bit more about the markets today. So is now all the good news priced in here for the next few weeks if they get this temporary resolution, or do you think as the details come out and it looks encouraging that this is over, that we'll start to see the markets propel higher?
no, I think the market begins to propel higher. You know, we're just around that time of the year when the market usually does pretty good. It begins to really mushroom out during the middle part of October. So we're just basically there. But, you know, and then you have to realize that even though we've only had a handful of earnings so far, but surprisingly enough, they've been pretty good.
Yeah, that's something we spoke about last time, is the thought that the earnings would be a little bit of
And
weaker.
what was impressing me is that guidance is positive. So that's a good sign. Now, of course, tomorrow, you know, we have some bank earnings coming out. That will be a test for the market. But I think the rally continues.
So let's talk about Janet Yellen now. This was not unexpected. It now ends the certainty as to who will replace Ben Bernanke. She is dovish, and that's something the markets certainly like.
Absolutely. And, you know, even though I believe that they probably will begin to taper in December, the fact is that Mrs. Yellen, she's very astute, very bright, as you said, dovish, probably the most dovish of the group.
Of the group.
And of course, you know, the thing is that I believe she would probably do anything, use any unconventional means to get full employment.
Well, she mentioned that yesterday.
So,
employment was going to be ahead of inflation. We don't see any inflation right now. Is that the right move from an economic standpoint?
At this point, I think so, because, you know, one of the problems that we have with the labor market is not because companies don't have the means to hire. They certainly do. I mean, look at the balance sheets.
Yes.
You know, they continue to improve. But there's that fear factor. And that fear factor, unfortunately, has emanated from Obamacare and other concerns of this administration. So I think, you know, it's important to get the unemployment rate down. You know, full employment is at 5%. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But we could see the employment rate if some of these uncertainties are removed back down to 6.
But what are the long-term consequences to the economy with Janet Yellen possibly keeping the stimulus going well into 2014? We may see some tapering, but not significant.
Right. Look, until we have a real heat up in inflation, and I don't think that's going to come about anytime soon, because if you look at the global economy, we're growing maybe 3.5%, possibly 4% by the end of the year, you know, for all of 2012. Europe is just coming out of its steep recession. Asia is just basically holding on, not really growing to the extent that we would have to worry about inflation. And by the way, China has done a good job. China has done a real good job in stemming inflation. So we're growing maybe 2.25%.
With rapid growth in China, certainly.
So I don't think, and the key to all of this is oil prices. And guess what?
They're going down.
They're going down. Why? Because we are becoming more self-efficient.
We've done that story. We've been producing a lot of oil. Peter, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Peter Cadello. Who is our favorite person of the day? He is someone going to jail for a very long time. We'll have him after the break. You are watching Arise Exchange. Fortune magazine has released its annual ranking of America's 50 leading businesswomen. Topping the list is Gina Rometty in her second year as CEO of the 102-year-old tech company IBM. Rometty is followed by Indra Nooyi, chairwoman and CEO of PepsiCo, the largest food and beverage company in the United States. Ranking third, Ellen Kullman, the head of DuPont, with company stock more than doubling during her tenure. In charge of the world's largest defense contractor, Lockheed Martin, is Marilyn Houston. She just stepped into the job in January. And then there's Sheryl Sandberg, Chief Operating Officer of Facebook. This year, she launched her book, Lean In, that made her a global celebrity. Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, that person is the former mayor of Detroit, who is heading to jail for a very long time. Kwame Kilpatrick was once seen as a savior for the troubled Motor City. Instead, he ended up committing wholesale theft of Detroit money, convicted on 24 counts of corruption, extortion, racketeering, bribery, and tax fraud charges. Among his crimes, prosecutors say Kilpatrick created a pay-for-play system, steering some $73 million in city contracts to a friend. He also was convicted of turning nonprofit-run groups that helped poor Detroiters into his personal slush fund, using the money to pay for yoga and to send his kids to camp. In fact, prosecutors who examined his bank records say he spent $840,000 more than he took in his salary, and he couldn't account for where the money came from. Kilpatrick quit office in 2008 amid a scandal involving sexually explicit text messages he sent, and it all went downhill from there. He's already served time in prison on obstruction of justice charges. In total, 18 city officials who worked under Kilpatrick have been convicted on corruption charges, and today Detroit is officially bankrupt, in part due to his increasing the city's debt to $18 billion. And so, Kwame Kilpatrick, who was sentenced to the max, 28 years in prison today, is our favorite person of the day. How instant gratification is taking over the retail world, that's next. You're watching Arise XChange. Imagine reading about a hot new product and then being able to buy it instantly. That is the new trend of something called instant gratification for retailers. But is it all about consumer convenience, or will it lead to more buyer's remorse? Britt Beamer is president of America's Research Group, and he joins us now on Skype. Good afternoon, Britt.
Good afternoon, Andrew. Good nice meeting you.
So tell me a little bit about how this works, that somebody can read something and then immediately buy it.
Well, as I understand it, the process is where you're going to be able to read something and see it in a magazine, be able to scan it and go in your computer and then be able to order it immediately. And I think keep in mind that while that may seem like a wonderful idea, the fact is that the consumer is not going to like it if they got to pay extra to do that. And that's always been the key to so many things out there today, is that the consumer loves getting instant gratification if they're not paying more. And I think that's going to be the big issue.
Well, it takes impulse buying to a new level, but what about the threat of buyer's remorse here? Because there's lots of things that we look at and say, hey, I want that. And, you don't have to actually whip out your wallet and take hard cash to pay for it.
Well, that's the other issue, Chris. Keep in mind, anyone that's going to offer this program is going to have to offer some kind of satisfaction guarantee for 30 days or so the consumer is going to be able to return it if they don't like it. Keep in mind, years ago, when people used to buy furniture on the different TV shopping channels, there was a 40% return rate, not because they didn't like it, because it wasn't the same color.
It didn't fit? Couldn't get it up the stairs of your apartment? I know.
Exactly.
So, is this going to help the competitiveness among retailers? Are they going to all be out there trying to get this technology?
I think a lot of retailers are going to be doing this technology. I mean, the only drawback I see is really just one, and that is if the consumer wants to order this and really get instant gratification, the process is going to be totally seamless. So any problem that comes up or any little problem within the process that they have to go through 3 or 4 extra steps they didn't expect or want, that's going to raise the irritation factor high, and that's going to then force the consumer out of the idea.
For retailers, what are they looking at as far as, theoretically growing their sales by this? Do they capture a lot of people who make split-second decisions? Is that part of the goal here?
It is. Keep in mind, there's probably somewhere between 13 and 18% of all decisions made in America that are instant gratification. So I mean, that's between 1 out of 7 to 1 out of 5. So I mean, that's a lot of decisions being made. Now I'm not going to count groceries into that, but when you look at the categories across the board, I mean, sometimes as much as 35% of apparel purchases are instant gratification. So it depends which category it is. I think that's where there's some opportunity, particularly if the process is seamless.
Well, let me ask you that. And that, by the way, those numbers are really surprising to me, that many people. And I guess we're all guilty of it a little bit. Let me ask you a little bit about what products do you think will be best for this from a retail standpoint? Is it clothes? Is it consumer electronics? Could it be a car?
I think I haven't ever studied the issue particularly, but I would think some type of electronic gizmo, I mean, whether it's going to be some kind of new coffee maker or something like that, could really probably benefit the most. I mean, I'm giving that as an extreme example. I'm sure there's better examples, but that's the category when people do buy something with immediately when they have instant gratification. Things of that nature always rank the highest. But I think you also see apparel do well too. But I think probably the least category will be electronics because it's a bigger ticket purchase. Sometimes people want to go visit the store first. So, I mean, it may be something in the electronic field, but I don't think it'd be a TV or computer, though.
Okay. Britt, thank you so much. Britt Bremer, president of America's Research Group. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Well, a quick little recap of what the markets did today. The markets roared back to life today on just crumbs of news that a debt ceiling deal is near. Take a look at this. The Dow up 323 points. All of the indices there better than 2% to 15,126 for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Tomorrow, the annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund kicks off in Washington, D.C. We'll have a report. We're also scheduled to get the Producer Price Index, which measures inflation at the wholesale level, retail sales, and consumer sentiment all coming in. That's Arise XChange. I'm Andrew Schmertz.